good morning, everyone, and welcome to UroNurse. We meet every Saturday at 9 a.m. Central Time. Hey, if you're watching us on LinkedIn, welcome to the show. YouTube, Facebook, any of those platforms, you are more than welcome to watch us. And be sure to hit those like and share buttons. If this is your first time checking us out here on UroNurse, be sure to look at our website at uronurse.com. It's the best place to go to learn more about us. It's also the best place to go to see all of our past episodes. And we've got 45 episodes in the cooker there. So be sure to check those out. Now, how do you get in touch with us? How do you ask a question? Your comment box. It's right there. Just put your questions into the comment box and we will be reading those live on the air. So we've a really neat show for you today. I think it's the timing couldn't be better. This week, we're going to have myself, John Lin and Andrea Strong, all speaking on how to speak virtually, how to do what we're doing, so that maybe you wanted to do it. Maybe you already do it. You want to learn a little bit more about how to do this. It's going to be a great talk, and we're going to get right into the talk. We're going to skip some of our usual introductions and favorites and stuff and just go right into the talk because we're going to do all that stuff anyways as we discuss things. So again, feel free to use comment box whenever you want. We will bring those up later on, but we're going to hit the show and I'm going to kick it off with the importance of mastering virtual public speaking. So why is this important? Well, with the rapid growth of the digital market, there's more and more opportunities to go out and present virtually. And, a lot of people say that COVID caused all this. Well, that's not true. I think what COVID did is it pushed the timeline way ahead. We would have gotten here anyway. The Zoom existed, FaceTime existed, Teams existed. All these things were here before COVID, but COVID made us comfortable with being learning on screen, working virtually. It gave us a different option. And I think we found out there are some things about the virtual world that you cannot always get when you're into the not virtual world. So it's important to be good at this because it's not going away. The other thing is it gives us a global reach. Now, when I would go and educate at a conference, usually it was my local Chicago conference. I had, a handful of Chicago people, maybe 100 people in the room. At a national meeting, maybe there'd be 20 or 200 in a room that you're reaching. This particular show can reach everywhere. It's global. It can go to all markets. So I think that's the big thing that digital is bringing us is the bigger audience. Flexibility. People's time schedules are not what they used to be. We're all working hard, trying to balance family and career. And sometimes you just don't have time to get to a meeting at night at a nice restaurant, because you got kids who have to get to soccer practice. So I think that really shows the importance of having options for people. So video on demand. This is always recorded. Most of these sessions that are done on demand are recorded so that it gives you that flexibility. So my prediction is that this is not going to go away anytime soon. I think this is going to be around for a long time to come. And I think we're going to see more and more, people have talked about hybrid meetings and maybe that, you'll have kind of a mixture where some of it's live, some of it's not. We've done that with our local chapter. And hey, it's great. We can bring speakers in from all over the country to a local meeting and there's no cost involved. And, it's getting expensive. We all kind of know the economy and what it's been doing, but it's expensive to go to a conference. I added up to go to my national meeting. It'll cost about $2,000 to $3,000 per person because of the cost of travel, and hotel rooms have gotten ridiculously expensive. Heck, restaurants aren't cheap. Everything. It's just getting more and more expensive. And it's maybe putting it out of the reach of a lot of people. So another good reason I think that this is going to be the future and this is going to be around. So it's important to learn. You need to do a good job at it because if this isn't good, no one's going to want to see it. Now, I think it's kind of interesting to know a little bit about all of us and kind of figure out what our stories are. And I'm going to start off with my story since I'm on the screen. I got involved in urology really early on in my career. I was about 2 years into nursing, just got out of nursing, and I was working in orthopedic surgery. And I was working my way up to becoming a head nurse. That's what my goal in life was at that time. I got a job as an assistant head nurse. The head nurse was going to be leaving, getting married, and moving away. So that job was sort of kind of in the bag for me. So all of a sudden their marriage break or their wedding broke off. They broke up. She wasn't getting married. She wasn't leaving the job. And I was stuck on the 3 to 11 shift, which I didn't really want as the assistant head nurse. And not that I was, not going to stick it out and try to continue that career, but this group of urologists approached me and said, "Hey, we've been hearing a lot of good things about you. Would you be interested in joining us in private practice?" And I'm like, well, I don't know, what's that all involved? And they kind of explained what they were looking for. They were a 3-man group, and they said, nobody knows what's going on between the 3 of us. He said, we all kind of work independently. We need the glue. So adding a 4th doctor is just going to be another person who's not going to know what's going on. So they go ahead and they hired me as kind of the glue for the group. I would know what's going on. They all had different ways of practicing, so I could share how each thing, everybody was doing what they were doing. So it kind of coordinated things. Also was a great experience. One of the urologists told me, he says, you need to know as much as a resident in urology. And he says, and I'm going to make sure you do. And he did. He went out of his way. Every day we had, discussions on cases. Every day I had to go over x-rays and tell him what I saw on the x-rays. We reviewed x-rays every morning. So it really was a great education in a field that I just turned out to love. Now, education, I decided early on that I really wanted to, once I felt comfortable in my knowledge, that I was going to go and help to spread the word. And that's what I did. So I lectured locally. I lectured all over the country, and even globally. I lectured in Madrid, Spain. And, it was really kind of a nice opportunity to talk to people. Now, I found that it's disappearing. People aren't coming to things anymore. So that's why I started UroNurse, because I still want to spread the education and pay it forward. But now I'm using this new media. So I've been involved in urology for 40 years. I still work. I'm working only part-time, which gives me the opportunity to do more. And that's why I'm doing UroNurse. So let's bring in our next panelist, Andrea Strong. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Andrea Strong. I'm a nurse practitioner in Wisconsin. I have been in urology since 2010. I worked for many years as a registered nurse, and urology picked me. And now I'm here and I absolutely love it. When I was in my senior year of nursing school, I received an externship at one of the local hospitals, and they asked me, well, what floor do you want to be on? I said, I don't really care. Just put me on any busy medical surgical floor so I can work on my time management and my skills. So I was randomly assigned to the urology floor. My first job as a registered nurse, I was in the hospital setting, and they asked me again, what floor do you want to be on? Again, I said, I don't care, just a busy medical surgical floor so that I can gain my skills. And I was randomly assigned to the urology floor. A few years later, I wasn't looking for a job, but I had a friend who said, hey, listen, I know a job that you'd be perfect for. And that's an outpatient urology position. And here I am. I did that position, and then I decided to go on further to get my advanced degree. And I really love urology for a lot of reasons. One is how supportive the environment is. I've been involved with SUNA and other organizations. Everyone's so kind. There's a lot of collegiality. And it's pretty fun. I find that working with urologists is really fun. They have a great sense of humor, and we get to deal with a variety of issues. We do surgical, we do medical, we do a lot of patient education, and some of it's more serious, life or death, cancer issues, and some of it's more quality of life, such as incontinence, and that's also super important. So I'm really happy to be here. As far as my public speaking experience goes, I was working as an outpatient urology nurse in an academic setting, and I had the honor of working with some wonderful mentors that were very established and accomplished, and they encouraged me to become more involved. And my segue into public speaking was one of my mentors saying, hey, why don't you just give an introduction to one of the speakers? It's an easy way to dip your toes in the water. You don't need to create anything yourself. Just get used to standing up there and speaking. So I did that at a local meeting. And then after that, I was encouraged to do some more public speaking, one of which was a local conference. And I decided to do it. At the time, I was working with a urologist who ordered a lot of biomarkers for prostate cancer screening and diagnosis. And there was a lack of information available to other nurses and nurse practitioners on the topic. So I volunteered to give the presentation. The conference was a huge success, more than I expected. It was 120 people live. And I think Vic was at that first presentation I ever gave. So it was 120 people live, and it was recorded for future viewing. I was so nervous. I mean, I could barely eat breakfast. I think I got down a piece of toast with a little bit of butter. But there's a couple strengths that I had from that presentation that I'll share with you. One, I was very prepared for that presentation. I actually created the presentation months and months in advance. I practiced every Saturday morning once or twice for that presentation. And it was an hour-long presentation, me talking for a whole hour. So I was very prepared for this presentation, and it helped with my nerves. I knew right before I got up on that stage that no matter how nervous I was, I could definitely give this presentation that I had practiced so many times. I even had the gestures down and everything. And when I first started to speak, I felt like the air was taken out of my lungs and my voice was coming out just squeaking like a little mouse. I kind of calmed down after a few minutes, and I kind of locked on to one mentor in the audience. You'll find that if you're giving a presentation live, that people have different expressions. Some people are distracted playing on their phone. Some people look really bored. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Maybe it's a topic that they don't do in their own practice. So it's important to not take it personal, but there's always going to be somebody in the audience who's smiling and nodding and giving you encouragement. And I know Vic was there that day, smiling and nodding among other important people in my life. And I just locked on to those supportive people and continued to give the presentation. When I give live presentations now, I tend to look above everyone's head so that expressions don't affect your ability to give that presentation. And then as far as the virtual presentation of things, that started around the time of COVID. At that time, I was in grad school and we were doing live courses and we had to quickly switch to virtual courses. And you could see the progression over time. When we first started doing our Zoom courses, people were sitting on the floor, people were sitting on the couch, slouched over. And then communications came out from the university saying you need to be sitting up at a desk, you need to be properly dressed, you need to have proper lighting, you need to have your camera on, you need to participate. So you could see the progression over time where we ended up in a very professional environment where everyone felt engaged and everyone felt heard. So that's a little bit about the virtual presentation piece. And then things sort of progressed as far as giving virtual presentations and opportunities on UroNurse and other professional organizations. And I will say, as far as giving presentations, I was terrified in the beginning, but there was a quote, and I know I'm so cheesy with the Florence Nightingale quotes, but I just find them to be really inspirational. Another one of my favorite quotes is, "How little can be done under the spirit of fear." And whenever you're thinking about doing something scary and crazy and exciting, think about that quote. And I hope that if you're interested in doing presentations, whether live or virtually, that you would consider it. I'm not the best public speaker. I get nervous. I say, I stumble over my words sometimes, but it's not about being the best. It's not about being perfect. It's just about having the courage to get out there and do the work. And at the end of the day, it's all about the patients and making the patient care even better. So that's my origin story.
Well, that was really great. Glad to hear I was one of your inspirations in the crowd. All right,
Thanks.
John, we're going to switch over to you.
All right. Well, I'm a private practice urologist in Gilbert, Arizona. Urology was serendipitous because as I was going through medical school, on my third year rotation, I happened to be assigned to urology. I had no idea about urology. No idea. Didn't even cross my radar when I was thinking about residencies. Went through the rotation. We did some of the coolest stuff during that time. I saw Dr. Para. So it was a gunshot wound victim that bullet had transected the distal portion of the right ureter. So you can stretch the ureters to reconnect them, or what he did was he took the appendix, swung it over, and used that as the missing piece. My mind was blown. And we were dealing with all sorts of weird cancers and all sorts of big surgeries during my rotation. I was hooked. Also, I knew I had about $250,000 of debt that was coming out of from medical school. So I knew I had to service that debt. And unfortunately, we make our choices, residency choices, specialty choices, depending on the amount of debt that we had. I was no exception. So I picked urology. It was the best decision ever. It changed it really, literally, I'm living beyond the American dream right now. And urology did that. It's changed my life. It's going to allow me to leave a legacy. And another way that I can leave a legacy beyond my family is through communication, through sharing of knowledge, through videos like this, which will live most likely in perpetuity. It will live forever. Learning the ability to communicate is going to allow me to leave a bigger legacy and leave a bigger impact than just my patients and my family. I recall my first public speaking presentation. It was in front of about 200 people. I was flown to San Diego to give a talk on, believe it or not, marketing to National Association of Bookstore Sellers. I was so nervous. Not only did I take one beta blocker, I took 2 beta blockers. And by then it hit me like a brick. I felt like someone was sitting on my shoulders and I barely could get the word out. And they liked the presentation so much that they invited me back the next year. I was hooked, but I was still horrible at it. And like Andrea said, it takes a lot of practice. And somebody asked in the comments, Katie asked, how do you get rid of the nerves? And one of the best ways to do that is to practice a lot. And Andrea got so good at delivering the words, she started working on the body language of delivery. So in any case, that's how I got into communications and public speaking. And now I'm hooked on it. As a matter of fact, I just completed a virtual masterclass on public speaking yesterday evening. That is how much I'm committed to doing this better than I did the last time. Back to you, Vic.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate everybody's stories. I think that we all have one thing in common, and that's a love for urology. I think it's just one of these fields that you don't always think about it as your favorite thing to go into, or maybe it's not the first thing you think about. But once you're in it, you find either you love it or you hate it. And then most people love it. Now, one interesting thing I will ask. So for those of us that have kids, at least myself, what do your kids say you do for a living? Urology is one of those things that typically comes up. My kids are more than glad to say, yeah, my dad's a nurse. He takes care of patients. But nobody's ever said, yeah, they take care of the ureters. And, I don't know, John, I know you have children. What do your kids say?
I would tell you, I was so proud of my kids. When one of them was 3 years old, she said, my bladder hurts. 3 years old. So we talk about urology. We talk about what I do. We talk about vasectomies, prostates, urinary difficulties. We talk about that all the time. No holds barred in my household.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you find it, some of the family members are comfortable with it. Some don't. My mom, unfortunately, was too comfortable with my profession. We were on a cruise ship and she's like, you got to give a lecture on impotence. I said, are you kidding? I said, I'll get no rest on this cruise ship. So I think it's really a testament to what's involved in being committed into this profession. All right, we're going to move on to our next part of the show. And that's me talking about the equipment you need. Hey, have you ever heard the expression lights, camera, action? There's a reason that lights comes first. Lighting is very important. People underestimate it. And I've had a number of online talks with folks, and they've got a window in their back, putting light from behind blowing out the picture. You can't see how it looks. You know, it's very important to have good lighting. Actually, what we do is that I'm going to show you, we're going to go through our studios. Everybody has a little different technique for their studios. Oops. We're going to go through our different studios. Just wanted to get rid of that. And show what we actually have as a studio setup. And the one big thing that I'll say is you could probably see from the three of us, we all look good. And whether you had a really expensive setup like John does, or kind of a mid-range expensive like myself, or Andrea, who really has a budget setup, it's little things you can do. You don't need to spend a lot of money to look good. It's just putting lights in the right places and remembering that. Now, that said, what's the second most important thing? Well, it's camera's the second thing in the speech, but it's not. You can have a so-so camera and it'll be okay. But if you've got a so-so microphone, it's not going to be okay. People will not listen to bad sound. So you have to have good sound. Now, you may see here in my picture, there's a microphone. It's always good to have a secondary microphone. Don't use what's inside your computer. Most of the computers have pretty decent cameras, and you can get by with the camera. I don't use one. I use a separate camera just because I can get a better picture, and I have one. It wasn't something I had to buy. I already owned one. I've been a terrible hobbyist in a lot of things, so I spent a lot of money. But anyways, camera on your phone or on your TV is fine, your monitor, but you do need to get a microphone. Now, do you have to spend a lot of money for a microphone? Absolutely not. A good USB microphone will work fine. Amazon sells one. Actually, the one that you saw Andrea using in the picture is, I think, $17, and it really works well. But it's, if you use the ones that are built in, they tend to amplify everything. So you have just too much noise going on. Now, the other thing that's really important, and sometimes isn't always obvious, is your internet connection. So how do you connect to the internet? Most of us connect over Wi-Fi because it's convenient. Is it the best way? Not really. If you want to get the best connection, you need to go with an Ethernet, a direct plug-in. It's going to be your most stable connection. Wi-Fi is going to go up and down depending on who in the room is using the Wi-Fi. So it's kind of important. The other thing is, when you buy an internet package, most of us look at what the download speed is because we're streaming things and it's bringing it down into our computer. And you can have the highest download speeds for not a lot of money. What's more important, though, is the upload speed when you're doing this. So upload speed is usually a lot slower than what you're getting download speeds. Now, in order to stream, what we're doing is called streaming. You need to have at least 4 megabytes per second. And you can test your own internet by going to speed tests, just SPEEDTEST, Google it. It'll bring you right over to their site. Or there's testmy.net, which is another site you can go to. And those sites will tell you what your upload speed is and what your download speed is. And so if your download speed is high, great. But if your upload speed isn't very good, you're not going to be able to stream very well. Now, this particular program allows us to use 1080p, which is the highest quality that typically is sent over the internet. And my internet that I'm hooked up to is a 1 gigabyte download, which is fantastic. I can stream things like that. But my upload speed is also 40 megabytes per second. I only need 4, so I've got a lot of headroom. So I know I can push a good signal out there. Really important. So lights, decent camera, better audio are the most important things for equipment. Now, other things that you want to be aware of is, and you'll see when I show my studio, is what your surroundings are like. Do you have hard surfaces all over the place? Because if you do, they're going to reflect the noise. The sound's going to bounce off of things that are hard. My studio happens to be surrounded by glass. I live on a lake. I've got these huge windows that face the lake, and that's where I set up at. Nice view to look at, but it's not a great one for sound. All of these are covered during the broadcast so that I don't have this reflection going on. What you see behind me is a backdrop. You don't need to have a fancy backdrop, but I do, because behind me is more glass. And I don't want to have that reflective surface. So this helps absorb the sound. So these are all the important things that you need to have when you're trying to figure out what kind of equipment to have. And you don't have to spend a lot. And I think that probably the most important way we can talk about this is what's everybody's equipment look like. So I'm going to switch it over to our equipment. And I'm going to actually start with Andrea. So I'm going to have her present with her setup. So Andrea, go ahead and let us know what equipment you have and how you're using it.
Sure. So you can see my humble equipment here. This is actually my kitchen table. And I will set this up right before UroNurse. It takes me less than 5 minutes, and I take it down right after UroNurse. I use 2 computers. I only use the second computer as a stand for my light. And yes, that's a cardboard box that helps prop up that computer. I've been using the same cardboard box the whole time. I don't remember what I ordered in that cardboard box, but that's the one that helps me set everything in the correct position. So then if we move to the next slide, this shows the area where I sit. So let me break down my equipment here. I'm using the Januvio USB microphone. As Vic said, it's under $20. This was provided to me by Vic as the producer of UroNurse. It rates very well on the Amazon reviews. And Dr. Lin gave me some advice on this. When I first got this, I had it right here, right up against my mouth. And he gave me some tips on turning it a little bit to the side so that the sound is higher quality. My camera, it's very small. You can see it at the top of my laptop there. I noticed when I was doing UroNurse that other participants' quality of their cameras were much better than mine. I was using the one on my computer. So I borrowed this from my husband's setup. He actually works from home. And this is the Logitech USB camera C920X. It's the HD Pro webcam. And this is somewhere between $55 to $70 that you can purchase online. They also have it on Amazon. My light setup. So this is the video conference lighting kit. It's dimmable LED ring light, and it just clips on. It's $22 on Amazon. It actually changes colors. I'll kind of change that. I'm not sure if you're able to appreciate that on the screen, but I can dim it up. I can dim it down. And it works out really well. It's pretty cheap. I have a friend who is an executive, and she has a very large ring light that's of a higher quality. And it's absolutely amazing. I don't have the space for that, unfortunately. And then in addition to that, I have an Anchor 4-port USB hub that was $16. And that's because I had too many USB plugins. I also have the Logitech wireless mini mouse that was $12.50. Most of us already have a laptop, so I didn't include that in the cost. So the cost of my setup is $140.50, and I think it works out pretty well.
Oh, great. Excellent. So now we're going to move up to the next probably price tag, and that's my setup. So here you can see this is what UroNurse looks like coming at you. So as you can see over here, we've got these shades that are down. This one here is not down because I wasn't broadcasting at the time, but this is what helps absorb the sound, also helps to prevent the light from coming through. They're about $200 a piece to buy these shades. So but it does work as 2 purposes to shade the room. Now I talked about lights, camera, action. There you can see those are my fancy lights. Now the big thing is what you see covering them are diffusing shades. You can buy these on Amazon. They come in a 4-pack for like $10. And what they do is they take the real brightness out of the bulb so that you've got the diffuser on your picture. So that's I really like to have that. Very inexpensive. And as you can see, way too many monitors, right? Well, each one has a different purpose, but I have 4 different screens that I'm looking at any time. And we'll go to my next slide. Remember I said lights, camera, action, and headlight. So the third light is over your head. So you should have light coming in from each side, and then you need light coming in from above to light up your hair. And that's what this is. Just the normal lamp I had above me. So I just put those diffusing things on the lamps, and it does a great job. This monitor up here is actually the monitor I use to change things in the program to operate StreamYard. It requires that I have this little box here that has different things I can push to make different things happen during the show. As you'll see, we change who's on and some things popping up and down. That's all comes through that. And that means that this other monitor over here which is on my right, is the one that works off of this box here, which is called the A10 Mini Pro. That's a switcher. So I can hook up different things, up to 4 different cameras or different computers. I've got two computers hooked up to it and a camera all feeding through there. It allows, what we're looking at here is what's going to happen next, what's in the show. So this is the preview picture. This is the current show, and then some other information. This shows that I've got 2 of them hooked up right now, but these are empty. Also lets me see my sound levels to make sure that the sound going through is looking good. So it gives just a lot of information. Once I get things set, I rarely look at that one again. This is my main monitor. This is the one I'm looking at all the time. And most importantly, we mentioned the microphone, the secondary mic. So I have a good mic. And also that angle, as Andrea had mentioned, should be like a 45-degree angle, not right in front of your mouth. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of popping sounds as you talk. So that helps prevent that pop from happening. And this is a new thing I just had to add. I have a skylight. It's really nice sometimes to have a skylight. But right now, during this particular time of the summer, the sun comes right up through that light and it'll be like burning out my retinas. So I came up with this solution, a golf umbrella. So for the next probably 2 or 3 more weeks, I'll have to block it with the golf umbrella. And then I did mention the backdrop, and that's what that looks like. Now, you'll see that Andrea just used a painted wall, which works great. John uses an office look, and I kind of like that industrial look, but that would mean I'd have to keep this area here a lot cleaner than I tend to do. And the other thing I mentioned is you can kind of see peeking back here is a big window, and that window is also going to cause a lot of reflection. So the backdrop helps prevent that reflection. It also helps to give a nice background for what you're looking at. And that is what UroNurse looks like. I'm going to show one quick demonstration before I switch over to John. So I talked about that lighting for the hair light. Here's why it's important. So that's without the hair light. That's with the hair lighting. So, hey, you know, when you do this, you got to study everything. And so that includes things like hair lighting. Now for the super studio, we're going to switch to John. John, take it away and show it off.
All right. This space did not become this space overnight. It's an iterative process, and I keep improving it. I keep changing it because I'm never complacent, whether that is seeing patients, practicing urology, or doing this virtual presentations. Before I set up the studio, I had the concept of telemedicine before the pandemic started. So this was already starting to take shape, but then the pandemic just fully accelerated the creation of this space. Like Vic said, the environment in which you are recording is important. What you see here, this thing right here, these are, and also that rectangle behind me, these are sound absorbing panels to minimize the echoes reflected by the harsh surfaces. That's why the audio is clean. You don't hear the slap back or the echo that you commonly hear when people are presenting using their laptop microphones and also the webcam camera microphones. You hear a lot of echo. They call it, it's actually reverb, but it's echo or slapback. You don't hear that in this studio space. So the environment is super important. And I treated the sound, and there's push-up ceilings and also carpeting on the floor. So it minimizes the reflection. If I want to go next level, I would put some carpeting here to decrease the reflection from this hard surface here. And what you're seeing is what I have to work with. I have 4 cameras, believe it or not. This is camera number 4 to show the behind the scene shot. And what I can also do is switch over this main camera. I'm looking at it. And if you look here, it's that camera right there. Okay. There's also a teleprompter, meaning I'm projecting words to remind me what to say in an outline format. Behind the teleprompter is a camera. So when I'm looking at the teleprompter, my notes, there's a camera behind it. So that's why it looks so natural. I'm looking at you when I'm speaking. And then there's this side shot camera, which for interest, it's on a slider. It goes back and forth to switch up the scene, to keep that audience's retention, the visual interest, so that, if you're looking at TV, that's what they do. They keep switching shots so that it keeps your interest, right? So that's exactly what I do. And then the last camera that I have is this ultra close-up camera. Don't get grossed out, okay? This is the ultra close-up camera. I'm in your intimate zone, and that's why I don't use this camera a lot, because this is what I really want to impress upon you, a point I'm making. I switch over to this camera, but most commonly, I want to be in the social zone. This distance right here, about an arm and a half lengths away from you. If we were in person speaking, I want to be at this distance. So the study of proxemics comes into play even in the virtual space. So those are my 4 cameras. And then you already saw the background setup regarding the tech. The sound, being the most important, is captured by this microphone here off to the side, like I mentioned to Andrea in the past. And that sound is sent through this audio mixer because I think audio is more important than the quality of the image that you're sending out. And that's why I spend a lot of time trying to perfect the sound. And it is still, again, an iterative process. I'm still trying to be better. I really believe in the principle, Japanese principle of Kaizen, continuous process improvement. So that's the sound is sent through this. The video and audio are captured in this piece of software, free, called OBS. And that stream is then sent to StreamYard. And that's what you're seeing in this type of a setup. So I have 2 lights in front of me. These are Elgato main lights with grid. So it's controlling the type of light and also how much light, the color, and also the direction of the light, so it doesn't spill over to the background. And also, like Vic mentioned, I also have a hair light, and I have that via remote control. It's very subtle. It outlines the head and also the shoulders of the talent or the person speaking. So I'll turn it off. So it's off right now, and now I'll turn it back on. So it's a very subtle change, but it makes you pop out. But you don't need to do any of this. Andrea's setup is perfect as long as you remember the basic principles of audio first before the video when you're giving a virtual presentation. Back to you, Vic.
Yeah, I think if we all look like Andrea, we wouldn't work so hard on our lighting and all our special extras that we need. But no, the reality is, I think we can see that there's 3 different studios. You're seeing all of us back there next to each other right now. We all look good. The main thing is we're paying attention to lighting, what's behind us, so that we don't have distractions. We've got the best quality audio that we can, muster. And all these things make for a good production. And that's what we look for. All right, we're going to take it to our next part of the show, which is Andrea's going to be speaking on inclusivity language in virtual public speaking. Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you. So I wanted to highlight the importance of inclusivity and respectful communications in virtual presentations. There's evolving conversations about this in all aspects of our society, from news to marketing to healthcare delivery, entertainment, and workplace communications. In the professional area, there's a lot of emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that is DEI for short. Again, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's often positions within organizations to help guide inclusivity efforts. For example, Cornell has an inclusion and diversity course. There's corporate diversity consultants. There's also universities who have DEI officers to help with those efforts. More than ever, people are paying attention to how inclusive an organization is. So how do we do this in real practice? You can support inclusivity and respectful communications in your presentations by selecting language, photos, colors, we'll get to that, and branding that is inclusive. Using gender-neutral language such as individuals, people, clients, patients. Avoid gendered language when addressing the audience. For example, we may use the phrase, "Hey, you guys, it's time to sit down. We're going to get started." Or, "Attention, ladies and gentlemen." Instead, you might try welcome everyone or attention please. In urology, I can think of an example where someone may be giving a presentation about pessaries and using the terms she, her, or female. I think it's important to remember that not all patients using pessaries identify as female. So you could change that verbiage over to clients, patients, individuals, persons. Also, when you're speaking in professional settings or in clinic settings, spouse or partner instead of using husband or wife. Instead of using biologically male or biologically female, you might try assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth. Make closed captions available through Zoom or whatever platform you're using, with an auto transcription or a transcriptionist for those who may have difficulty hearing, and choose colors that may affect those with color blindness. I went down a rabbit hole last night looking up information about this. So color blindness affects up to 8% of our population. Some people include Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Clinton, and Prince William have color blindness. There's red-green color blindness, and there's also blue-yellow color blindness. So you want to avoid using yellow, blue, red, or green, especially when presenting graphs. And in general, you want to use colors that are very contrasting to make it easier for everyone to see. I think I gave a presentation a while ago where I used a black background with white script writing. And I think that that was really easy for everyone to be able to see. I was doing some research on this presentation and I came across some really interesting references. There is a website, it's diversitystyleguide.com. Again, that's diversitystyleguide.com. And this is a resource that was designed for journalists and other media professionals to cover the complex multicultural world that we live in with accuracy, authority, and sensitivity, according to the website. So this guide was initially a project for the Center for Integration and Improvement of Journalism at San Francisco State University. And it includes 700 terms related to race, ethnicity, disability, immigration, sexuality and gender identity, drugs and alcohol, and geography. So in conclusion, when communicating in any setting, we want to be cognizant and respectful of the terms that we're using in all presentations. Thank you.
Oh, that was really great. I didn't realize about the color blindness, your color choices and things. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Okay, and then in our next talk is going to be you speaking to us also on nurse communications in virtual public speaking. Go ahead, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's a lot of challenges that are faced by nurses in giving presentations and in giving virtual presentations. More and more nurses are being asked to present in professional settings, whether that's work related. Maybe you're on a work group, maybe you are part of a committee, conferences, case reports, M&M presentations, unit-based education. It's been about 13 years since I graduated with my undergrad degree. I remember giving lots of presentations, but I don't remember a lot of formal education on how to do that and how to be good at it. So I think that that's one of the challenges. Additionally, time constraints are a huge barrier. I've worked inpatient, I worked outpatient, so I understand the challenges that you're going through. So I think it's really important for us to advocate for ourselves and create boundaries when we are in virtual meetings or virtual presentations. I know there's a lot of nurses out there who are doing committees and work groups who are trying to multitask, do your patient care while charting, trying to do it all. Nurses, we give and we give and we give. And that might mean that during your meeting, you're not on camera and you're on mute because you're trying to multitask. I think it's important that we advocate for ourselves. Ask one of your coworkers to take your Vocera, to take your pager, so that you can find a quiet place with good lighting, put yourself on camera, and make sure you've got good audio as well, as we pointed out, so that you can properly advocate for what you need in the workplace and what your patients need in the workplace. And I think when you advocate for yourself and you set those boundaries, you're giving permission to the rest of us to do the same for ourselves and our patients. So that's really important. Nurses are already excellent communicators. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the room, and I'm sure you've had the experience as well, when a big team comes in, they tell the patient and the family what's going on and what the plan is. As soon as that team leaves the room, the patient and family look at you and say, "What did they say?" And you're doing the translating to these patients. So we already know how to do this, how to do active listening, how to convey empathy. We just need to work on translating that into the virtual setting. So some tips that I found in virtual presenting is to look at the actual camera. And it feels a little weird at first, but I remember when I was interviewing for positions, there was someone interviewing me who was looking right into the camera, and it felt so different to me to do that interview with her. She was a nurse practitioner, and it felt like there was really a connection there. And so that's when I started realizing, hey, this really makes a difference looking into the camera. And strategies for clear and empathetic communication in a virtual environment. Again, you want to look at the camera as if it's that person's face. You don't have to stare at it the whole time, the same as you don't have to stare at someone's face the whole time, but that makes a big difference. You can convey emotions. Just because you're in a virtual setting doesn't mean that you can't convey those things. So looks of concern, nodding your head, smiling, those are all still really important nonverbal cues to give in a virtual environment. Again, remember that even if the presentation or the meeting is virtual, there's still an expectation that you're going to show up dressed professionally in a professional environment. And I think that's the best environment for us to communicate and to advocate for our patients.
Oh, that was great. All right, I'm going to take over now and switch over to managing anxiety in public speaking. And I think it was a lot of great points Andrea made that some people forget is that it's important that you address the camera, because that's who really your audience is. I can't tell you how many things I've been on where somebody's looking at their secondary monitor the whole time because that's where their notes are, and that's what they look like. That's not a good look on camera, folks. So, but since we're all going to have to do it someday, and maybe you're thinking, maybe I can do this, maybe I can't, but I'm just too nervous. How do you manage anxiety? Well, I think we alluded to it early on. The way I do it is preparation. I practice. I want to know these slides inside and out when I'm giving a talk, because I want to not be the first person surprised by the next slide. And it's happened to me where I hit the slide and I'm like, I wasn't expecting that slide. So you have to know your slides, know what you're going to talk about the slides. You want to memorize it. You can have little notes. If you have got small things to remind you, that's fine. But if you're reading a script, people are just going to tune you out. It's boring to listen to somebody read a script. Now, you want to have, for virtual, if you want to use notes, have them close to your camera. You can't see, but I've got it right over here. I've got another iPad that's up there with my notes, and it's showing me what points I don't want to forget. Because this is technology, I want to make sure that you're familiar with what you're using. That means practice with the equipment. So if you're going to present on Zoom, make sure you go on Zoom. Make sure you got the latest software. If you're presenting on StreamYard for UroNurse, boy, you're lucky, because all you have to do is have the Chrome browser installed and click a link. Everything's there for you. The show is able to be run from behind the scenes by myself, so you don't have to worry about a lot of the technology. But it's always good to get and make sure that your slides are working properly. Do you look good? You know, about 15 minutes before the show comes on, we have what we call our hair and makeup, and it's just for that. Is the lighting good? Can I hear your mic okay? So you're not going to be so nervous if you feel like everything is working fine. as Andrea said, get a quiet space when you're working. You don't want to have, background activity going on. You don't want to have a lot of noise that's bothering you. I'm lucky in that I've got actually all this a fairly small space, but it's completely surrounded by doors. I can shut everything off. And then the big last thing I'm going to leave you with is, if you got the ability, record yourself, see what you look like, watch yourself giving the talk. I've done that a million times just to see how I feel like my presentation was going. Am I looking in the right place? If you don't have the ability or the equipment, you just practice it out loud. Don't just do it in your head. Say it out loud, because it works differently than when you do it in your head. You need to actually say the words out loud. That's your best way to practice. And join UroNurse. Look into giving a talk on UroNurse, because you can get a good practice session and then watch it back on demand. And this is a good way to hone your abilities. I can tell you that I think that those of you that have been watching this program for a long time can see the comfort level that Andrea has, that John has, that I have, because we've done it a lot. And that's the only way to get good at it, is to do it. So that's going to be it for anxiety. You can get over it. It's not that hard. I'm going to switch over now to John's talk, which is going to be on effective communication techniques in public speaking. John, take it away.
And I'm going to ask for forgiveness at the outset, because I'll probably go over 10 minutes, if that is okay.
We're going to go for it.
Okay. Good communication is like a great food dish. It's not just one ingredient, but the right mixture of numerous ingredients. And as already been mentioned, no one teaches us effective communications. We're taught math, science, history, computers, economics, but no one teaches us effective communications. Yet this is something that we do every single day. As an immigrant who came to the US back in the 1970s, I spoke zero English. So this was a big struggle for me. Maybe that's why I'm so fixated on it, because it is something that I had to work really hard to get to where I am. Communications is nothing but sales. And you know what? We are all selling something whenever we communicate. Just think about this. If you have kids, the kid's asking for something. They're trying to sell you something. They want to convince you to think their way so that you would act on something. Every single day, you're asking patients to start clean intermittent catheterization. I'm talking to patients, trying to convince him to have a TURP, a vasectomy, radical prostatectomy, start LHRH therapy. You're always selling. Communication is nothing but sales. And last example I'll give is you asking your spouse to go to your favorite Thai restaurant instead of Italian that she favors. That's sales. That's communications. Some special virtual communications considerations we already talked about. And I'm going to re-emphasize the importance of sound. Just think, when you're watching a horror movie and you turn off the sound, that horror movie becomes a comedy. That is how important sound is. So the appropriate microphone technique that Andrea alluded to earlier, the framing of the shot, the quiet environment, looking into the camera, because I'm looking in your eyes when I'm looking in the camera versus looking at my confidence monitor, looking at StreamYard. This is how I engage with the audience. And Vic has already very astutely pointed out, you want to light your face. Light your face. Common mistake is to be facing away from the window and then the light is behind you. I don't care about your back. I want to see your eyes. I want to see your face. So that's one of the techniques. Those are some of the technical techniques of effective communications. When it comes to public speaking and communications techniques, believe it or not, body language is 55% of communications. So studies have shown. And that's why this shot is what you see. You can see my face, obviously, big part of communication. You can see my hands, my body language. Most of communication is body language. More difficult to do virtually, but it can be done with the appropriate framing of your shot. Then 38% of communication are vocal foundation. And believe it or not, 7% are the words that you use. That's it. So what you say doesn't matter as much as how you say it. Some vocal foundations. rate of speech. Variation is important. If you do something the same way over and over, if you speak at the same rate of speech, it becomes monotone, and it becomes it becomes non-functional, I would say. So anything that is constant becomes non-functional in communications. You want to vary your rate of speech. And when you are saying something really important, you want to slow down your rate of speech. And that's a highlighter, a virtual verbal highlighter. Second thing is volume. If you speak in a high volume or higher than normal volume, what does that convey? You're conveying energy, power, authority, credibility. And that's why whenever I'm in front of a camera, my energy level, my vocal level is at least 1.5 times normal, if not 2 times normal, face-to-face in-person speech, because that camera kind of robs you of your energy. And that's why when you're speaking on camera, 1.5 times the normal volume, just so that you can convey the energy, the belief, the power, and the authority. Third point will be pitch and melody. If I ask you to remember a page out of your favorite book, which contains about 280 words, versus asking you to recall or recite or sing your favorite song, you remember that song, which also contains about 280 words. The reason you remember the song and you can't recite a page out of a book is because the song has melody. It conveys the feeling of the music. And just like when you're speaking, you should have melody and variation in pitch. It's kind of like the backing track to that music. Melody is the backing track to your language. And a quick tip for all of you: beware of upspeak when you are finishing your sentences. At the end, you slant upwards. That upward inflection of that voice, it robs you of your authority, of your credibility, of your believability. You're showing deference. You're asking a question. You're asking for permission. Whenever you finish your sentences in an upward speak. All right. So number 4, tonality. It's the emotion underneath the words that you're saying. You want to be able to feel your words. And for instance, one of the easiest ways to do so is what I said. You want to feel your words. Elongate the vowel. Here's something that you may be familiar with. I'm going to read this to you. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Now, contrast that with this.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
I mean, just the emotion, the tonality, the variation in pitch. It's music. You're listening to music when he spoke. So anyway, tonality, melody, so important. Tonality is also dictated by your facial features. If you have a resting father face, RBF, commonly known as, you're gonna have a resting father tone. If you have a monotone face, if you speak with a flat facial expression, you're gonna have a monotone voice. If you have a monotone body, you're gonna have a monotone voice. So depending on how much you believe, how passionate you are with the topic with which you're speaking, then you may want to have a monotone voice. Or if you really want to convey this concept, this idea, if you really want to have influence, you may want to consider variation in pitch. Lastly, pause. It gives the audience time to think about what was just said. You want that concept to sink in. It also allows you some time to reframe and also to think about what you're going to say. I hope in my short presentation that this short presentation gave you some pause. in considering upping your communications game, because it can literally change your life by helping you achieve your dreams and make a great dish by using all of the right ingredients perfectly. And just as an aside, I was just recently booked for a keynote that is paying me thousands of dollars. Literally, it can change your life. It can change your trajectory, and it's good for the wallet too. Back to you, Vic.
Absolutely. That's true. It is profitable if you're a good speaker and people want to hear you speak. You get paid for doing that too. I'd like to open up to questions now. Just if you have any questions, feel free to put those through on the comments. And let me just see here. I do have one coming in here. Katie says, great job. I learned a lot. Thanks for the tips. Well, you're welcome. That's what we were here for. One of the things that I really like that you mentioned was the pause. So many people want to put like and 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 when you hear that thousands of times throughout a presentation, it just drives you crazy. So take the time to think. You can pause. It's okay. It'll be okay. So great. I don't see any other questions. I think we're running a little bit close to our time. So since I don't see questions coming in, I've got some big announcements to come through here. So I'm going to, hit over to, if I get these things to work. Oh, now I understand why it's not working. I'm hitting the wrong button. Sorry about that. Know your technology, right? So, all right, folks, I do want to give a little plug for next week's talk. It's going to be me talking about how to create presentation using PowerPoint or Keynote. I think it's the perfect segue to this past talk that we just gave on how to give the talk. How do you make the talk? How do you create those great slides? What's the good ideas that you want to put down on the slides? What do you want to show? So join me next week. I'm going to go through not only through how to do that, but also how to use AI, like I spoke about before, to help in your production. That picture you're looking at was drawn by me, and I can't draw a thing, but I can tell you I know how to prompt the computer to do it. So we'll teach you a little more about that. And hey, put this on your date. Save the date. Big announcement. July 29th is going to be our 52nd episode. So I'm calling that our 1 year anniversary, 1 year of UroNurse. So join us. We're going to have some interesting things going on that day. We are going to have a raffle. I have some prizes. The grand prize is given by Suna. Suna, I just got off the line with them the other day, and they said, yes, we want to support you with a 1 year free membership. That's a $95 value, folks. So you get grand prize is going to be 1 year free for Suna. Also, last time I asked about a pen versus a shirt, and everybody said they wanted a shirt. So I just ordered some UroNurse shirts. So we'll be giving away some of those. Also, we're going to raffle those off. So be sure to tune in for that show. You have to be live. You can't see it if you're not live. And a little teaser, UroNurse is going to do something new for the next year. I've got something new I'm introducing, and it's going to be introduced on that show. Glenn Sully, the president of SUNA, is also going to be joining to talk about what the benefits of becoming a SUNA member are. Now, if we tempted you a little bit about talking and becoming a panelist on UroNurse, hey, join us in the after party. Go to uronurse.com, click that button, after party. It'll transport you right in here with us, and we'll be sure to answer any questions you might have. Maybe you were thinking of it, but would like to ask us a question. Join us in the after party, and we'll be glad to talk to you about any questions you have about becoming a panelist or talking, any other things that you want to talk about. And for those of you that are going to enjoy the rest of your day, please go ahead and enjoy your day. It's been great having everybody here. Enjoyed having all the panelists, and we'll see you soon.